The wind howled like a beast unleashed, tearing at Eleanor's frail frame as she stumbled through the blinding rain. At 94, her bones ached with every step, but the betrayal cut deeper than the cold her own son had driven her to the edge of town and left her there, muttering excuses about burdens and nursing homes before speeding away into the night. Clutched in her trembling hands was the quilt she'd spent years stitching, a tapestry of memories woven from scraps of her life's joys and sorrows, now her only shield against the storm's fury. Eleanor collapsed against a splintered fence post, the quilt draped over her like a sodden cloak. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the desolate countryside where she'd been dumped like forgotten luggage. Her mind raced back to warmer days, to the tiny cottage where she'd raised her family single-handedly after her husband's early death. She'd been a seamstress then, her needle flying through fabrics that told stories: wedding dresses for hopeful brides, tiny bonnets for newborns, and mints for the worn-out clothes of the poor. But age had stolen her steady hands, and with them, her purpose. Her son, Harold, once the apple of her eye, had grown distant, his visits laced with impatience. "You're too much trouble, Mother," he'd said that evening, his voice cold as the rain now soaking her through. She hadn't argued. What was there to say to a child who'd forgotten the lullabies she'd sung him? As the storm raged on, Eleanor forced herself to move, her quilt-heavy steps leading her toward a faint light in the Distancia ramshackle barn on the outskirts of Willow Creek. She pushed open the creaking door, collapsing onto a pile of hay that smelled of earth and decay. Shivering, she unfolded the quilt slightly, tracing the patterns with gnarled fingers. Each square held a piece of her soul: the blue patch from her wedding gown, the red from Harold's first school uniform, the floral print from her granddaughter's christening dress, a granddaughter she'd never met, lost to family rifts long ago. The quilt wasn't just fabric, it was her legacy, stitched with love and loss, a silent testament to a life of quiet endurance. Morning broke with a reluctant sun, the storm having passed, but leaving destruction in its wake. Eleanor awoke to the sound of voices outside the barn. Farmers were assessing the damage, their boots crunching over fallen branches. One of them, a burly man named Tom with kind eyes hidden under a weathered hat, spotted her huddled form. "Ma'am, you all right?" he called, his voice laced with genuine concern. Eleanor nodded weakly, pulling the quilt tighter. Tom helped her to her feet, offering a warm blanket from his truck and a ride into town. "Can't leave you here like this," he muttered, shaking his head at the cruelty of the world. In Willow Creek, a small town nestled between rolling hills and forgotten dreams, Tom dropped her at the local shelter. The place was a haven for the downtrodden, run by a no-nonsense woman named Clara, who took one look at Eleanor and enveloped her in a hug. "We've got room, dear. Come on in." As Eleanor settled into a cot, she spread out her quilt, its colors vibrant even in the dim light. Other residents gathered, drawn by the intricate designs. "That's beautiful," whispered a young mother named Lily, cradling her infant. "Did you make it?" Eleanor nodded, her voice cracking as she shared snippets of its story: the late nights by candlelight, the threads pulled from old clothes, each stitch a prayer for better days. Days turned into weeks at the shelter. Eleanor found solace in mending clothes for the others, her hands steadier than she'd thought possible. But the ache of abandonment lingered, a shadow that darkened her dreams. One evening, as she sat by the window watching the sunset, Clara approached with a newspaper. "Look at this, Eleanor. There's a craft fair coming up in the city. You should enter that quilt of yours. It could win something." Eleanor laughed softly, dismissing the idea. "At my age? It's just an old woman's folly." But Clara persisted, and soon, with Tom's help, they packed the quilt and headed to the fair. The city buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to Eleanor's quiet life. Booths lined the streets, showcasing handmade wonders from across the region. Eleanor entered her quilt anonymously, her heart pounding as judges inspected it. Whispers spread. This one's special: look at the detail, the emotion in every seam. To her astonishment, it won first prize, a modest cash award, and a feature in the local paper. But as she collected her ribbon, a twist unfolded. A reporter named Mia, sharp-eyed and ambitious, recognized the quilt's unique style from a childhood memory. "My grandmother had something like this," Mia said, her voice trembling. She was a seamstress too, but we lost touch after a family feud. Mia's words hit Eleanor like a thunderclap. Could it be? Her long-lost granddaughter? The resemblance was uncanny, the same green eyes, the curl of hair. Mia explained. Her mother, Eleanor's daughter who'd run away young, had passed years ago, leaving Mia with stories of a grandmother who'd sewn magic into fabric. Tears flowed as they embraced, the quilt between them like a bridge across lost time. I never knew, Eleanor whispered, the pain of abandonment easing in the warmth of rediscovery. Yet, the story was far from over. The quilt's fame grew, catching the eye of a traveling art collector who bought it at auction for a sum that stunned Eleanor. With the money, she and Mia planned a new life, but fate had more in store. Whispers of the quilt reached even higher places, carried on winds of chance and destiny. As the quilt vanished into the collector's hands, Eleanor felt a pang of loss, but Mia's presence filled the void. They moved into a cozy apartment in the city, where Eleanor taught Mia the art of sewing stitches that bound not just fabric, but hearts. Mia, a journalist by trade, wrote about their reunion, her article going viral and touching souls across the nation. Readers sent letters, sharing their own stories of estrangement and hope, reminding Eleanor that her pain was not unique, but part of a larger tapestry of human frailty. One crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived with a royal seal. Eleanor's hands shook as she opened it, an invitation from the palace. The queen herself had acquired the quilt through the collector, drawn to its poignant beauty during a state visit. It speaks of resilience. The letter read, and we wish to honor its creator. Mia's eyes widened. Grandma, this is incredible. You're going to the palace. Eleanor, humbled, could scarcely believe it. At 94, abandoned and forgotten, now summoned by royalty, what cruel irony, or perhaps divine justice. Preparations buzzed with excitement. Mia helped Eleanor select a simple dress, one she'd sewn herself decades ago. Tom, the farmer who'd found her, drove them to the airport, his truck polished for the occasion. You've come a long way from that barn, he said with a grin. On the flight, Eleanor gazed out at the clouds, reflecting on the storm that had upended her life. Harold's abandonment still stung, but forgiveness flickered in her heart. Maybe he'll see the news, she murmured to Mia. Maybe he'll understand. The palace loomed like a fairy tale, its spires piercing the sky. Guards in crisp uniforms escorted them through marble halls adorned with priceless art. Eleanor clutched Mia's arm, overwhelmed by the grandeur. In the throne room, the queen awaited, the quilt draped over a velvet pedestal. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the queen said warmly, your work has moved me deeply. It tells a story of love enduring through hardship. Eleanor curtsied awkwardly, her voice steady despite the emotion. It's just pieces of my life, Your Majesty, stitched together with hope. As they conversed, the queen shared her own losses, a distant family, the weight of duty. We are not so different, she confided. Age brings wisdom, but also loneliness. Eleanor nodded, feeling a kinship across worlds. The visit culminated in a ceremony where the quilt was displayed in the royal gallery, a symbol of everyday heroism. Photographers captured the moment, Eleanor's wrinkled smile beside the queen's regal poise. But amid the joy, a twist emerged. During the palace tour, a young aide named Lucas approached shyly. Ma'am, I think I know your son. Eleanor's heart skipped. Lucas explained, grown up next door to Harold, now a struggling businessman riddled with regret. He talks about you often, but shame keeps him away. Mia's face hardened, but Eleanor softened. Tell him the door's open. Lucas nodded, promising to relay the message. This unexpected messenger, a boy from her past neighborhood, shifted her perspective. Perhaps abandonment wasn't final, but a detour to redemption. News of the palace honor spread like wildfire. Back home, Eleanor received calls from old friends, even distant relatives. The shelter in Willow Creek threw a party in her honor, Clara toasting to the Queen of Quilts. Yet, Eleanor remained grounded, using part of the auction money to fund sewing classes for the elderly, teaching them that their hands still held value. One evening, as snow dusted the city, a knock came at the door. Harold stood there, eyes downcast, a bouquet in hand. Mother, I'm sorry. The words hung heavy, laced with years of unspoken pain. Eleanor stepped aside, inviting him in. Mia watched warily, but Eleanor embraced him, the quilt's spirit guiding her toward healing. We've all been lost in storms, son, but we find our way back. As winter deepened, Eleanor's story inspired a movement, communities forming support groups for the elderly, emphasizing that no one should be abandoned. The quilt, now a palace treasure, became a beacon, its threads weaving tales of forgiveness and human connection. With Harold's return, family bonds began to mend, thread by fragile thread. Dinners together became routine, awkward at first, but warming with time. Harold shared his struggles, financial woes. A failed marriage, admitting his abandonment was born of desperation, not malice. I was wrong, mother. So wrong. Eleanor listened without judgment, her heart expanding to encompass his pain. Mia, initially resentful, softened under Eleanor's influence, recognizing that forgiveness was the ultimate stitch in life's quilt. The palace invitation had ripple effects. The queen, touched by Eleanor's humility, established a foundation for artisan elders, funding workshops nationwide. Eleanor became its ambassador, traveling with Mia to share her story. At one event, in a bustling hall filled with aspiring seamstresses, Eleanor demonstrated her techniques, her voice steady and inspiring. Every scrap has worth, she said, just like every life. Applause echoed, but in the crowd, another surprise awaited, an old flame from her youth, widowed and searching for closure. His name was Samuel, a tailor who'd once courted her before her marriage. Ellie, he whispered, using her old nickname. I saw you in the papers. That quilt. It's masterpiece. They reminisced over tea, Samuel revealing he'd followed her life from afar, regretting lost chances. This twist added layers to Eleanor's emotions, a reminder that life held untapped joys, even at 94. Samuel joined their circle, his gentle presence bringing laughter and shared skills, emphasizing that connections could bloom anew. As spring arrived, Eleanor faced a health scare, a fall that landed her in the hospital. Doctors warned of fragility, but her spirit remained unbroken. Harold and Mia took turns at her bedside, the family united in worry. You've given us so much, Harold said, tears in his eyes. Eleanor smiled weakly. And you've given me back my family. Recovery was slow, but it deepened their bonds, teaching the value of presence over perfection. The quilt's journey continued to unfold. A documentary crew approached, wanting to film Eleanor's life. Reluctant at first, she agreed, seeing it as a way to amplify voices of the forgotten elderly. Filming took them back to Willow Creek, where Tom greeted them like old friends. That storm brought you to us, and look where it's led. The barn, now repaired, became a poignant set piece, symbolizing survival. During production, a crew member uncovered an old letter in Eleanor's belongings, a message from her late husband, praising her sewing as the glue that holds our world. Reading it aloud for the camera, Eleanor's voice cracked with emotion, the words reigniting her sense of worth. The documentary, titled Threads of Time, premiered to acclaim, winning awards and sparking national conversations on elder care. Summer brought royal correspondence again. The Queen invited Eleanor for a private tea, the quilt as centerpiece. This time, the family accompanied her, Harold, Mia, even Samuel. The palace gardens bloomed vibrantly, mirroring Eleanor's renewed vitality. Over scones, the Queen confided in personal vulnerabilities, forging a friendship that transcended status. Your story reminds us all to cherish our elders, she said. Back home, Eleanor started a new quilt, incorporating fabrics from her reunited familia, tie from Harold, a scarf from Mia, a handkerchief from Samuel. Each stitch carried gratitude, weaving past pains into future hopes. Community events flourished under her guidance, with seniors finding purpose in creation. Yet, challenges persisted. Harold's debts threatened stability, but collective effort selling quilt patterns online, Mia's articles generating donations prevailed. This trial reinforced resilience, showing that families, like quilts, could be patched and strengthened. As autumn leaves fell, Eleanor reflected on her odyssey from abandonment to adoration. The storm had stripped her bare, but it revealed inner strength and unexpected allies. Her life, once frayed, was now a vibrant mosaic, proving that even in twilight years, one could craft a legacy of love. Winter's chill returned, but Eleanor's home glowed with warmth. The new quilt grew under her fingers, a symbol of second chances. Harold moved in temporarily, helping with chores and sharing stories from his youth. "I remember you sewing late into the night," he said one evening by the fire. Eleanor nodded. "It was my way of holding things together." Mia, now engaged to a kind photographer from the documentary crew, planned a wedding where Eleanor's skills would shine designing the bridal veil. The foundation thrived, with Eleanor mentoring online classes. Seniors from across the country joined, their faces lighting up screens as they shared creations. One student, an 85-year-old veteran named George, sent a photo of his first quilt, dedicated to lost comrades. "You gave me purpose again," his note read. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. Her abandonment had birthed a movement of empowerment. A final twist arrived via post, a package from the palace. Inside, a replica of her quilt, stitched by royal artisans with a personal note from the Queen. "May this warm you as yours has warmed our hearts." Eleanor draped it over her shoulders, feeling the weight of honor. Samuel, now a constant companion, proposed a trip to her childhood village, closing circles of memory. Health steadied, but Eleanor knew time was finite. She penned letters to loved ones, imparting wisdom. "Storms come, but they pass. What remains is the love we weave." The documentary aired globally, inspiring policy changes, better elder protections, community centers for crafts. Spring's renewal brought the wedding. Mia walked the aisle in elegance, Eleanor's veil a masterpiece. Vows echoed promises of enduring love, mirroring Eleanor's journey. At the reception, Harold toasted, "To Mother, who taught us forgiveness." Cheers rang out, a chorus of redemption. As summer waned, Eleanor sat in her garden, quilt in lap, watching grandchildren play Mia's soon-to-be children, and perhaps Harold's renewed family. Samuel held her hand, whispering, "We found our happy ending." The original quilt, safe in the palace, became a tourist draw, its plaque reading, "A testament to human spirit." Eleanor's story ended not in isolation, but surrounded by love. At 94, abandoned in a storm, she'd risen to touch royalty and hearts alike. Her legacy? That age is no barrier to impact, and every life, stitched with care, holds royal value.